Hertz. A name you probably recognize if you've been to any airport. It's one of the biggest car rental companies in the entire world. But that might change soon, because behind the shiny logos in these airport kiosks is a company that's been accused of some seriously shady practices. From falsely reporting customers for car theft, resulting in arrests and life-altering consequences, to countless reports of bogus charges on top of their abysmal customer service, Hertz has been the center of controversy for years. With a long history of these shady tactics dating all the way back to the early 1900s, it's actually shocking that they're still in business. And not just in business, but they have locations in over 1,600 US airports and 1,300 international airports. These controversies we're going to dive into also just aren't a few isolated incidents. More recently, the company settled for $168 million after hundreds of customers were wrongfully accused of stealing vehicles. Like, just imagine you had a great trip wherever you went, you go back to return the car, you fly home, and then weeks or even months later in some cases, you're out of nowhere arrested because Hertz couldn't keep track of their own inventory. This was actually happening, and to multiple customers. On top of people using social media to publicly call Hertz out for stuff exactly like this, Hertz is also battling a lot of internal issues, and they have been for some time now, which continues to raise questions not only about how they are keeping up with their competitors, but also how did they get to this point and how long can they continue to stay afloat. Now, Hertz wasn't always this rental car juggernaut that you see today. The company was founded in 1918 when 22-year-old entrepreneur named Walter Jacobs had a simple yet brilliant idea to rent out Ford Model T cars to people who didn't own vehicles. Back then, cars were much more of a luxury than a necessity, so Jacobs saw an opportunity to get in on this untapped market, and he took advantage of it. He started with 12 cars and did everything himself: maintenance, bookings, repairs, advertising, you name it. And within 5 years, the business started raking in over $1 million annually, which nowadays is equivalent to over $31 million. Now Jacob being a multi-millionaire, he decided to cash out and sell the company, which I don't blame him, but it may have been the biggest mistake of his life and the ultimate turning point that changed the direction for the company forever. This is when John D. Hertz stepped in. Already being a big shot in the transportation world with the yellow cab, he immediately rebranded Jacob's entire operation to Hertz Drive Yourself system and aggressively expanded. This painted John D. Hertz as a savvy businessman who took the company global, but a lot of people didn't know that his methods weren't always above board. Competitors were often accusing him of undercutting prices just long enough to push smaller companies out of the game and then immediately hiking the prices back up when all the competition was gone. This led to the 1930s when Hertz's business exploded thanks to two key innovations: airport rentals and one-way trips. These were game-changing services that made it easier than ever for customers to travel on their own terms and not have to stress about transportation after the flight. But the only reason Hertz was able to secure these locations was using that aggressive pricing strategy and cutting deals directly with the airport, which made it nearly impossible for any smaller rental company to compete. And by the early 40s, when World War II was at its peak and most companies were struggling big time, Hertz on the other hand was thriving. This was all due to the fact that they decided to get in on the action and completely pivoted to selling vehicles directly to the military, which also led them to their next opportunity, as after the war, those same soldiers who were returning home needed reliable transportation as they re-entered civilian life. So Hertz doubled down on this booming car culture and massively expanded its fleet of vehicles. This is also when another company you may be familiar with called Avis started with the similar vision of post-war travel booming. But Avis was more focused on business travelers, and Hertz was more focused on just the everyday average Joe. By the 1980s and 1990s, Hertz was a global powerhouse. They expanded into equipment rentals and used car sales and completely diversified their portfolio. But the same aggressive tactics that had worked in the past didn't always translate well as they continued moving forward. For example, when they launched their used car sales lots, customers frequently reported a bait and switch tactic, like advertising for one price and tacking on fees and then swapping the car at the last minute, which led to the whole operation eventually being shut down due to this. But rather than expanding that portfolio, this just further tarnished their already bad reputation. Hertz rose to the top by staying ahead of the game and edging out smaller competitors, but that's no longer a viable tactic when customers are starting to completely avoid them. And those smaller competitors at the time, like Avis and Enterprise have now expanded beyond Hertz, and it's really affecting their business. What used to be brushed off as aggressive business tactics morphed into full-blown scandals that completely shattered customer trust and sent Hertz's reputation into a tailspin. Over the years, the rental giant found itself at the center of controversy after controversy, and each one more damaging than the last. Now, it's one thing to get a late fee, but imagine being accused of stealing a car that you rented. For a couple hundred Hertz customers, that was the case for them, and it wasn't just a bad dream. The company had repeatedly reported vehicles as stolen, even when they were being rented out legally, with paperwork signed and everything. One of the most jaw-dropping cases involved a former Marine who was arrested at gunpoint because Hertz mistakenly flagged the car which he rented as stolen. And stories like this aren't just outliers. By December of 2022, Hertz agreed to shell out that $168 million settlement to over 360 victims who were wrongfully arrested. Some lost jobs, others endured public humiliation, and many were left emotionally scarred. A complete PR nightmare for Hertz, and a living nightmare for its customers. And just when everybody thought it couldn't get any worse, apparently even if your car doesn't take gas, they might still charge you for gas. In May of 2024, renters of EVs or electric vehicles, Teslas to be specific, were stunned to find out that they were charged hundreds of dollars for fuel charges. And according to Hertz, this was due to a simple computer glitch, and refunds were offered immediately, but customers couldn't help question how a company that rents EVs could screw up this badly. And not just those who rented EVs, other customers reported getting slapped on with damage claims for scratches, dents, and other issues that were on the car and issues before they rented it. And many said that when Hertz failed to provide any countering evidence, they just left them on the hook for hundreds, even thousands of dollars. One of these customers recounted being billed $500 for a scratch that was already there, and despite submitting their own photos proving that the car's pristine condition at drop-off, with the scratch already there prior to driving it off the lot, it took months to get that charge reversed. And speaking of all these additional charges, some renters even found themselves being billed for outrageous charges for things like exceeding the mileage limits when the contract clearly stated it was unlimited miles. One guy was charged over $10,000 for allegedly driving 25,000 miles in a single month, which is a crazy amount of miles, but the contract that he signed specifically stated unlimited miles. And Hertz once again claimed this was just an error and eventually dropped the charges, but it's just one thing after another, and they're just finding things to blame other than themselves. And if you run into any of these issues as a customer, be prepared to find yourself stuck in an endless loop of frustration. Emails go unanswered, phone calls are redirected or dropped, terrible online dispute forms. It's really not an enjoyable process to begin with, and they aren't making it any easier for anyone. One customer shared that a $300 overcharge spiraled into weeks of wasted time as they were bounced between departments with no solution in the end. Others have reported similar struggles, describing Hertz's customer service as a black hole. But despite the avalanche of scandals and bad press over the many decades, Hertz somehow manages to still be in nearly every airport. The cracks are starting to show though, and more people are starting to choose other rental car services. Taking a look at Hertz's financial performance over the years, it's been a roller coaster, and not a fun kind of roller coaster. After filing for bankruptcy in May of 2020, a move which they blamed on pandemic-related losses, the company completely restructured and somehow managed to claw its way back into the stock market. But even after wiping out $5 billion in debt, things haven't exactly been smooth sailing. They made an ambitious $2 billion investment into EVs that sounded really great on paper, but by 2024, it became a massive financial misstep. Reports had revealed that many of those EVs they bought just completely sat unused due to logistical issues and inadequate charging infrastructure, which led to customer hesitancy. So instead of future-proofing their business, Hertz ended up with a very expensive problem that tanked their quarterly profits. When the company went public again in 2021, a lot of people had high hopes, and the stock was trading at $29 per share during its relisting. But now we see the stock trading around $3, and the company is on track for a second bankruptcy. And one of the only reasons Hertz hasn't completely collapsed is because of its near monopoly in all major airports. Airport partnerships remain the cornerstone of their business, providing a steady foot traffic and guaranteed bookings. However, even this is becoming an unreliable stream of income as they've faced a lot of turbulence with their customers. And competitors like Enterprise and Avis are starting to muscle in, offering better customer perks and stealing away the market share. While Hertz hasn't made any big announcements about shutting down any branches, the signs are all there. Customers in smaller areas have also noted disappearing locations, and social media chatter often includes complaints about once busy branches now looking just completely deserted. That attempt for Hertz to go green with the EVs was supposed to be a major game changer for them, and they seemed to put all their eggs in that one basket, but instead it became a $2 billion disaster by mid-2024. After splurging on those 100,000 Teslas and a few other EVs, renters found the vehicles were just confusing and didn't want to have to deal with finding charging locations. So while the vehicles sat unused, maintenance costs just skyrocketed, leaving Hertz with a lot of expensive cars that were just gathering dust. And meanwhile, people on social media continued to drag the company down further, with platforms like TikTok flooded with horror stories of wrongful theft accusations, outrageous fees, and then their abysmal customer service. The phrase "never Hertz again" has become a rally cry for thousands of frustrated renters, and videos warning others to avoid Hertz have racked up millions of views. Even loyal renters to Hertz are jumping ship, citing that issues and better deals can be found elsewhere. So how long really can Hertz keep this up? The answer is not forever, and to be honest, I don't think much longer. While the company still benefits from its airport deals, those advantages are being crushed under the weight of bad PR, financial losses, and declining customer trust. Hertz may still have its logo plastered across airports worldwide, but at this rate, it's only a matter of time before their cracks in the foundation cause the whole operation to completely crumble. And now the only question we have isn't if Hertz will fail, it's when it will fail. Thank you a ton to all the new viewers and those taking the time to watch this video. A lot of time is spent researching, writing, and editing these videos. If it made you say, well, that's something, then we achieved our goal here today. Please consider supporting the channel. The best way to do that is by liking and subscribing. I'm working on improving with each video, so again, I really do appreciate you watching this. As always, stay safe and stay curious, everyone.